I've recently gotten the itch to dive back into 3DS Pokemon games, so I decided to start with Pokemon X. Now, at least let me explain myself. See, I never got far in Pokemon X when it came out. The last memory I have of the game is chasing some person's dog around a maze and feeling completely overwhelmed having to learn the new fairy-type matchups. From what I gathered while preparing for this playthrough, Pokemon X's story and characters don't really feel fleshed out, and the game is incredibly easy. But I mean, like, come on, isn't like every Pokemon game easy? Anyways, this will also be an opportunity to check out the 3DS emulator for the first time. With an emulator, it is possible to improve the visual quality of a 3DS game so it doesn't look like some kind of low-quality video that hasn't loaded properly. However, I also want to keep my Pokemon after my journey by getting them back to Pokemon Home. So after a bit of Googling, I figured out that I could get my 3DS save onto an emulator and back with custom firmware and a $7 microSD card reader off of Amazon. I'm also not trying to just waltz through Pokemon X. No. That would be too simple. I've decided to do a Shinylocke playthrough of it.
Daring today, aren't we?
The 3 rules of this playthrough are simple. I can only use shiny Pokemon. I must follow Nuzlocke rules by playing on set mode, boxing a Pokemon if it gets knocked out, not using healing or battle items, and not leveling a Pokemon past the next gym leader's ace Pokemon. And finally, I can only progress past a route, cave, or encounter after I have acquired a shiny Pokemon. For example, I cannot move on from picking my starter until I have found a shiny, and I cannot move on from Route 2 until I have found a shiny, and so on. According to a Nuzlocke tracker, I will have acquired 40 shiny Pokemon by the end of my run. I'll also be able to load my save back onto my 3DS and ship off my newly acquired shiny Pokemon to home to collect dust. Now that the Expo dump is out of the way, it's time to begin my first full playthrough of Pokemon X. The beginning of Pokemon X is fairly similar to the other games in the series. You spawn in and go through some opening dialogue with your mom, you meet your rivals, and then you're presented with the starter of your choice. And this immediately begins our first hunt. I'm going to go with Fennekin, because it's the first choice that is hovered in the selection screen, and this will save me from having to do additional inputs while resetting. Plus, the color palette for this shiny is a certified Smogon Uber tier. While I am playing this game at full shiny odds, 1 in 4096 in this generation, I'm not averse to playing the game sped up or multi-boxing to increase my overall encounter rate. I've never done it before and it looks really fun when I see other people do it. So, let me break down the strategy I employed. Nah, I'm just kidding. The process is fairly smooth. For the first half of the conversation with my trainer friends, I mash L and A to reach the starter selection screen. After picking my starter, I immediately switch to mashing B for the rest of the conversation to avoid opening the nickname screen. Once the conversation is over, I attempt to leave the area to start the first trainer battle of the game to see if my Fennekin is shiny. This last step of entering battle felt way faster than opening my menus to view Fennekin in my party, but I never actually timed the process to see if it was actually faster. But hey, this is shiny hunting. If I was actually concerned about saving my time, I wouldn't be here. Around 1400 encounters at 500% game speed, I decided to see how easy it was to get a second emulator running at the same time. And it was, actually really easy. I mean, I just double-clicked it and it turned on. After about 30 minutes of having tasted the rush of dopamine that rushed straight through my dome from having doubled my shiny hunting efforts, I decided to try pushing things a little further. By opening not 4 Child's Play, not 6, I barely feel anything, but 9 instances of the game at once. I quickly took notice that with the 9 copies of a 3D Pokemon game being ran, RAM quickly became a precious commodity. And I decided for the rest of the stream that it would be in my computer's best interest to bring the number of copies of Pokemon down to a modest number of 4. That way, my room wouldn't feel like a sauna and my computer would stop sounding like this. But how could a simple 3DS game be chewing up so much RAM? Well, turns out the emulator likes to use more, and more, and more, and more, and more memory as time goes on. The emulator begins by using about a gig of memory, but as time goes on, it creeps up to about 3. Now normally this wouldn't be an issue, but I'm trying to run 9 of these puppies all at once. So instead of one emulator going from 1 to 3 gigs of memory being used, I'm now going from 9 to 27 gigs being used. Guess I should have downloaded more RAM. So, defeated by the knowledge that 9 copies of Pokemon would be pushing my computer to its absolute limit, I decided I would have to settle for fewer copies.
Is what a coward would say.
Welcome to the Real Gamer Zone. Did you really think that my computer begging for mercy would stop me? I turned on my late night, no cam, no mic, no fun allowed stream with 9 copies of Pokemon running, and breakcore blasting in my ears and got to work. It was amazing. For about 8 minutes and 30 seconds when one of my emulators decided to unalive itself. My quick solution was to turn down the game speeds from about 500% to 400% in the hopes of squeezing out a little more of that sweet RAM juice to keep up my 9 copy rampage. And it worked. For the next hour and a half, I was mining away, hoping to bring home that shiny Fennekin. Near the end of my session, my computer had had enough. First, Streamlabs crashed, and then my entire computer quickly followed suit. My uninterrupted, certified gamer session had shot me up from 1,700 encounters to almost 2,900. After the stream and computer crash, I opened up some copies of the game to try and troubleshoot what was going on with my emulator. And it was in these moments that I found it. I present to you, the viewer, with a shit-eating grin, the entire reason you clicked on this video, a screenshot of my shiny Fennekin that I found after 2,934 encounters. Okay, I know. You're probably saying, what gives, man? Well, if you've ever shiny hunted, you understand that these things decide to show up at the most unexpected times. I mean, it is gambling, of course, and you know what they say, I was due for a win. And of course, it had to be when I wasn't recording, not at any time in my 16 hours of streaming it. Anywho, the moment I get the chance, I will be naming this male Fennekin Clooney, after George Clooney and his role in the Fantastic Mr. Fox, because that was the only male Fox character in pop culture I could think of. With my shiny acquired, I got to explore the rest of the starting town for about 5 minutes until I encountered Route 2, which means my victory was short-lived and my next hunt stood before me. Only time will tell how long this next shiny hunt is going to take. And shiny Pidgey! Oh my god! We got a shiny Pidgey in 372 encounters.